For months now, the name 3E Atlas has hung over the night sky like a riddle no one can solve. An interstellar wanderer unlike anything humanity has ever encountered before, larger, brighter, and stranger than all previous visitors combined. It glows with an emerald radiance so intense that it has painted streaks of green across Earth's night skies, dazzling and unnerving even the most seasoned astronomers. From the moment it was first detected, nothing about it made sense. Its scale defied expectation. Its brightness defied physics. Its rhythm and its strange pulses of energy defied every model we've built for celestial bodies. And then, just as humanity began to settle into the idea of Atlas as a single mysterious anomaly racing toward the sun, something even more extraordinary happened. The unimaginable unfolded slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. Observers watching closely saw it change, not disintegrating in chaos like a dying comet, not shattering into jagged debris like an ice fragment flung from the outer reaches, but dividing smoothly, deliberately, into two colossal bodies. This was no fragmentation. This was reproduction. One body continued on its original course toward the sun, glowing steadily as before, while the other shifted its path, bending away, not randomly, but precisely, toward Mars. It was a moment that shattered the boundaries of what we thought we knew about celestial objects, forcing scientists, governments, and ordinary people alike to ask the same terrifying question. What exactly is 3E Atlas? And what is its true purpose now that it has doubled itself? High-resolution imaging revealed the process in real time. The coma of Atlas, that vast glowing cloud surrounding its core, developed a strange bulge on one side, a swelling of light that refused to dissipate. At first, astronomers thought it was a temporary flare, the release of gases or dust. But as hours passed, that brightening condensed into something else entirely. A second luminous core appeared, distinct yet tethered, drifting gently away from the original. We've seen comets fragment before, breakups that are violent, chaotic, spraying debris and jagged arcs across the void. Clouds of shattered dust scatter and fade as the comet dies. But Atlas's split was different. It was symmetrical, controlled, like a living cell undergoing mitosis, dividing evenly into two complete and self-sustaining entities. Both retained dense cores. Both radiated the same emerald glow. Both pulsed with the exact same rhythm. For scientists glued to their monitors, it was as though the laws of physics bent before their eyes. No known natural mechanism could account for such an organized division. Instead, what they saw looked intentional, a process carrying the haunting suggestion of purpose. Atlas had not broken apart. It had multiplied. Once the split became undeniable, attention shifted to a new question. What about the trajectories? Would both bodies follow the same path? Would the second fragment drift aimlessly, carried by inertia into deep space? Orbital calculations delivered their verdict within days, and the results sent shock waves across the scientific community. The original 3E Atlas maintained its steady arc toward perihelion, its closest pass to the sun. But the second object began to deviate almost immediately. Subtle at first, the shift grew more pronounced with every observation until the numbers revealed a chilling truth. Its path was bending directly toward Mars. This was not random. This was not an accident of celestial mechanics. The new object stabilized its course into what looked like an intercept with a red planet's orbit. Suddenly, humanity's dreams of Mars, its rovers, orbiters, planned missions, and visions of colonization were cast into jeopardy. A body the size of Atlas hurtling toward Mars could obliterate satellites, destabilize its thin atmosphere, and even send debris cascading toward Earth. Yet whispers began to spread. What if the course wasn't destructive, but deliberate? What if Atlas had divided, so that one half could continue its dance with the sun, while the other made its way to the planet humanity has long seen as its second home? Even more disturbing than the division itself was the strange bond that seemed to remain between the two bodies. Instruments across the globe and in orbit detected that their electromagnetic pulses were still synchronized, flashing in tandem despite the growing distance between them. Like twin beacons, they emitted bursts of radiation with uncanny precision, as if still connected by some invisible thread. When plotted, their pulses revealed identical timing, identical frequencies, identical variations, as though each half of Atlas continued to communicate with the other, operating as a single organism spread across millions of kilometers. The implications were staggering. Two separate objects divided and moving along distinct paths should have lost such perfect synchronicity. Yet they remained locked in harmony, and the effects rippled outward. Satellites orbiting Mars began to register unexplained fluctuations in their sensors, as if the red planet itself was already within the influence of the approaching body. Even the James Webb Space Telescope reported interference when attempting to focus on the region near Mars, its instruments clouded by rhythmic distortions aligned with Atlas's twin pulses. The idea took hold that these were not two separate entities at all, but one divided presence, a singular phenomenon maintaining awareness across vast distances. It was not destruction, it was expansion. And as orbital paths became clearer, the sense of dread deepened. The second object wasn't simply passing near Mars. It was converging with alarming precision. Its path intersected with the very zone occupied by the planet's satellites and rovers, as though it had chosen the red planet as a target. Was this coincidence? Or was it intention? Governments scrambled to reposition spacecraft, but private observatories and independent astronomers began to notice something even more bizarre. The second object wasn't merely glowing. It was emitting structured patterns of light. Spirals, grids, and geometric shapes flashed across its emerald halo, as though writing across the sky. Some compared these patterns to mathematical constants. Others pointed out eerie resemblances to ancient symbols found carved into stone on Earth. To many, it looked less like a comet's chaotic reflection of sunlight and more like a message, a display aimed at Mars. If the first Atlas fragment was the herald, a piece destined to complete its course around the sun, then the second appeared to be a messenger, a presence with its sights fixed on the red planet. And with every hour that passed, the question became harder to ignore. Was Mars chosen as a destination, a stage, or something far more unsettling? As the second fragment of Atlas continued its steady march toward the red planet, astronomers began noticing subtle changes in Mars itself. The thin atmosphere, usually calm and predictable, began showing sudden disturbances. Dust storms formed in patterns far too organized to be random, spiraling with eerie symmetry. Orbital cameras detected faint flashes in the upper atmosphere, as if the planet were responding to the approaching body with its own bursts of energy. Some dismissed these as coincidental Martian weather events, but the timing matched too perfectly with Atlas's synchronized pulses. Even stranger, Mars's faint magnetosphere, normally almost non-existent, began to register fluctuations, glowing faintly in ultraviolet scans, as though being reawakened. It was as if the fragment approaching Mars was already exerting influence on the planet, like a hand reaching forward before making full contact. To those watching, the image was terrifying. A green-tinged shadow falling across a world humanity has always dreamed of reaching, now perhaps claimed by something alien before we could ever call it our own. Normally, an event of this magnitude, an interstellar object splitting in two with one half targeting Mars, would dominate headlines. Yet from NASA and other space agencies came almost nothing. A few dry statements referred to fragmentation events and unusual orbital deviations. But the language was clinical, evasive, clearly designed to deflect curiosity. Behind closed doors, however, leaks told another story. Insiders spoke of frantic simulations showing possible impacts with Mars' surface or its moons. Engineers worried about the safety of rovers and orbiters, especially as communication blackouts with Mars assets grew more frequent. Yet instead of transparency, files were sealed. Public data streams mysteriously cut during key observations. Some suggested this was to avoid panic, while others believed it was far worse, that NASA had already realized the second object was not behaving like a natural fragment, and the decision had been made to hide its true nature. For the growing number of independent observers, the silence became its own kind of confirmation that something extraordinary and perhaps dangerous was unfolding, and the world was being kept in the dark. By the time the fragment crossed the asteroid belt, the synchronization between the two Atlas bodies began to evolve. Their pulses grew faster, sharper, as though signaling an impending phase. Scientists noticed subtle modulations in the light patterns, coded variations too structured to be random. The two bodies were no longer just twin emerald beacons. They were sending something. Data, energy, commands. No one could say for sure. And still the question hung over Earth like a shadow. If 3E Atlas is not a comet, not a fragment, not even a natural body, then what is it? A probe? A living organism? A machine built by hands or minds unknown? And perhaps more importantly, why Mars? Why now? As humanity watched through telescopes and live streams, a realization crept into the collective consciousness. We are no longer passive observers of a distant anomaly. We are witnesses to a process, an event that may be as old as life itself, now unfolding on a planetary scale in our own backyard. The first interstellar visitor to truly announce its presence has not come to our doorstep quietly. It has divided, moved with precision, synchronized across millions of kilometers, and begun to interact with the very world we hope to call our next home. Whatever 3E Atlas is, it is not done. And for the first time in modern history, the human race must confront a mystery that is not light years away, but already entangling our nearest neighbor. A mystery glowing in green, pulsing with purpose, and rewriting everything we thought we knew about life in the universe. Instead of flashing only toward each other, Atlas's twin pulses now aligned with Mars itself. Instruments across the solar system began to detect something extraordinary. A low-frequency resonance centered on the red planet, a hum so deep and steady it echoed through orbiters and rovers alike. Even the faint seismographs embedded in Martian soil by past missions registered unusual vibrations, rhythmic quakes that matched the emerald pulses streaking across space. Scientists struggled to explain how an approaching body could interact so precisely with a planet millions of kilometers away. But the pattern was undeniable. Mars was no longer just a target. It had become part of the signal, vibrating in harmony with Atlas's heartbeat. Theories erupted in every corner of the scientific community. Was the fragment trying to awaken something dormant beneath the Martian crust? Was it establishing resonance for a landing, or even preparing to transform the planet itself? Each new data point pushed the mystery further from natural explanation and deeper into the realm of design. For every skeptical voice insisting this was coincidence, another pointed to the overwhelming precision of the events unfolding before our eyes. As the second fragment neared Mars's orbit, telescopes around the world recorded a spectacle that left astronomers speechless. The emerald glow surrounding the body began to flare in structured bursts, projecting shapes into space like a cosmic light show. Spirals, triangles, hexagons, each one lasting for minutes before collapsing and reforming into new geometries. These were not random phenomena of dust and ice reflecting sunlight. The patterns were too precise, too deliberate, following ratios that matched mathematics and architecture known on Earth. Golden spirals, hexagonal tessellations, fractals, geometry that spoke a universal language. Ancient civilizations had once told stories of green stars that divided and returned as messengers, symbols of cycles that reshaped entire eras. Now, watching Atlas draw glowing equations across the heavens, many began to wonder, had those myths been memories of this very event, witnessed long ago and carved into stone so humanity would not forget? If so, then Atlas's division and its approach toward Mars were not accidents of nature. They were part of a process as old as the cosmos itself, one now playing out before our eyes. Attention soon shifted to Mars's two small moons, Phobos and Deimos. Usually quiet and unremarkable, these rocky satellites suddenly became the center of a storm of anomalies. Orbital measurements revealed that Phobos had shifted slightly in its path, as though tugged by a new gravitational influence. Deimos, even smaller and more fragile, began to reflect light strangely, its surface glowing faintly with a green hue that matched the pulse of the approaching fragment. Rovers on Mars attempted to capture images of these phenomena, but many of the files returned corrupted, filled with streaks of emerald static that no one could explain. Some theorists suggested the moons were acting as receivers, amplifying the resonance coming from Atlas. Others speculated that the fragment had deliberately chosen Mars because of these moons, as though they were keys to unlocking something hidden beneath the planet's surface. The red planet was no longer just a destination. It was becoming a stage where multiple cosmic forces were converging. The closer the fragment came to Mars, the more Earth's instruments began to fail. Satellites orbiting the planet started to drop offline one by one, transmitting garbled streams of data or going silent altogether. On Earth, telescopes attempting to capture images of the fragment experienced unexplained shutdowns, their systems rebooting without command. Radio dishes pointed at Mars received not data, but bursts of noise that seemed structured, almost musical, though wrapped in static. Independent observatories complained that every attempt to release their findings online was quickly followed by sudden outages, corrupted files, or unexplained cyber attacks. It was as though the universe, or perhaps those who understood Atlas better than we do, was preventing humanity from seeing what was happening in detail. For the first time in modern history, the world found itself almost blind to an astronomical event playing out in plain sight, left only with fragments of truth leaking through the cracks. Then came the reports from Mars itself. Seismographs embedded by past missions began to record unusual tremors deep within the crust, vibrations unlike any tectonic activity previously measured. These quakes were rhythmic, pulsing in sync with the fragment's emerald glow as it closed in on the planet. Rovers on the surface, though many were malfunctioning, managed to capture strange atmospheric phenomena. Faint green flashes across the horizon, glowing dust storms that swirled not randomly, but in patterns resembling spirals and hexagons. It was as if the planet itself was responding to the approach, vibrating in resonance, echoing the geometry painted in the skies by Atlas. Some scientists whispered that this was not interaction from the outside, but activation from within. That Atlas's second fragment was not coming to destroy Mars, but to awaken something that had always been there, buried beneath the red dust, waiting for the right signal. For those who dared to say it aloud, the implication was chilling. Mars had been chosen long before humanity ever arrived, and Atlas was only the trigger. Ancient records from Earth suddenly took on new weight. Civilizations across the globe, from the Mayans to the Sumerians, spoke of twin stars or green flames in the heavens that divided before descending toward a red world. Many had dismissed these as myths, symbolic tales of creation or destruction. But now, with telescopes watching Atlas split and one fragment veer toward Mars, the parallels became too precise to ignore. Researchers uncovered carvings depicting two suns joined by a bridge of light, others showing a serpent of emerald scales coiling around a red sphere. Were these coincidences, or were they memories, faint echoes of a cosmic cycle humanity had long forgotten? If ancient civilizations had indeed witnessed Atlas before, then its return was not an accident of orbit. It was a recurrence, a deliberate re-emergence at a predetermined time. And if the myths were right, then Mars had always been at the center of its purpose, not as a victim, but as a chosen node in a process beyond human comprehension. As the fragment drew closer, the Martian surface began to undergo changes no one could explain. Dust storms, once chaotic and driven by simple winds, started to organize themselves into colossal spirals visible from orbit. These were not natural swirls of dust, but vast coordinated structures rotating with the same emerald pulse that echoed from the fragment. Satellites that still remained operational captured faint glimmers of green lightning within the storms, bursts of energy that pierced the thin Martian sky in synchrony with Atlas's radiation. Some scientists argued these storms were simply atmospheric disturbances caused by electromagnetic interference, but the symmetry was undeniable. Others dared to suggest the storms weren't weather at all, but a signal, Mars itself becoming a canvas for the fragment's message, as though the planet was now part of a dialogue written in storms and light. Humanity watched in awe as the red planet was painted green by forces no one could control. For years, humanity's mechanical ambassadors had roamed Mars, transmitting images, weather reports, and geological data. But as the fragment approached, one by one, those rovers began to go silent. At first, it was minor intermittent signal loss, delayed transmissions. Then entire data feeds cut out, replaced with corrupted files full of static streaked in emerald hues. Engineers on Earth scrambled to recover connections, only to find that systems which had operated flawlessly for years now refused to obey commands. In the rare moments when data was received, it contained bizarre images, faint flashes of geometric shapes etched into the dust, strange shadows stretching across the landscape, and in one case, a green glow rising just beyond the horizon. NASA labeled these as glitches. But among the engineers who saw them before they were buried in classified archives, the whispers grew louder. The rovers weren't failing. They were being silenced, as though something didn't want them reporting what they saw. The global scientific community, long unified in cautious observation of Atlas, fractured under the weight of the second fragment's trajectory. One camp insisted it was still a natural object behaving in ways humanity had never recorded before. They argued that coincidence, not intent, explained its synchronized pulses and geometric displays. The other camp, growing louder with each new anomaly, declared that Atlas had proven itself artificial, intelligent, or alive. Heated debates erupted in conferences and private forums. Some researchers demanded transparency from NASA, ESA, and China's CNSA, accusing them of hiding data that could confirm the truth. Others warned that releasing everything might cause global panic. Meanwhile, leaked documents hinted that military satellites were now monitoring the fragment in secret, not as a scientific curiosity, but as a potential threat. The world no longer looked at Atlas as just a comet. It had become something greater, a test of what humanity was willing to believe when faced with the impossible. For the first time, the question was no longer just about what Atlas is, but what it intends to do. Was this a warning, a herald, or an invitation? And as the second fragment inched closer to Mars, vibrating in perfect resonance with the planet's crust, atmosphere, and even its moons, humanity found itself staring into the green glow of a mystery older than civilization itself, one that was not simply passing by but arriving, step by step, at our cosmic doorstep, that IT started as just another night of observation. But as Atlas's fragment approached Mars, something unexpected happened. The fragment moved between Mars and the Sun, creating a strange eclipse. Instead of darkness, Mars was covered in a curtain of emerald light. For hours, the red planet glowed like a lantern, covered in shifting patterns of spirals and hexagons. It looked less like a planet and more like a beacon pulsing with energy. When the eclipse ended, Mars returned to view, but scientists knew something had changed. In the days that followed, Mars showed signs no one could explain. Seismic monitors detected rhythmic vibrations, pulsing in perfect harmony with Atlas. These waves went deep into the planet, as if something buried within Mars had been awakened. The surviving rovers sent back strange magnetic readings, suggesting massive underground voids or structures. Some scientists thought old volcanoes were being reactivated, but others believed Mars had always been waiting, dormant, until Atlas arrived. Then the resonance spread beyond Mars. Radio telescopes on Earth began to pick up faint echoes of the same pulse. At first, it was background noise. Then it grew stronger, repeating in precise intervals. When analyzed, the signals revealed spirals, hexagons, and geometric patterns identical to those seen around the fragment. Atlas's signal had reached Earth. Governments quickly classified the data. Independent researchers who posted early findings online soon disappeared, their accounts deleted. For the first time, it was clear. Atlas's journey wasn't just about Mars. It was part of something much larger. One fragment of Atlas continued toward the Sun. The other deliberately steered toward Mars. And as it arrived, the planet changed. Dust storms formed spirals of impossible symmetry. The moons Phobos and Deimos began glowing with emerald light. The Martian crust trembled in harmony with Atlas's pulses. Mars wasn't being destroyed. It was being activated. The emerald eclipse, the strange seismic activity, the silence of the rovers, all pointed to one conclusion. Atlas was awakening something on Mars. Then came the echo. The same pulse that had synchronized the fragments now reached Earth. At first, it was faint static, but soon it grew stronger, structured, undeniable. It carried symbols, mathematics, geometry, and patterns long known to ancient civilizations. The same myths of green stars and serpents dividing the heavens suddenly seemed less like legends and more like memories. NASA has remained silent, but Voyager, the James Webb Telescope, and Earth's own instruments all confirm the same thing. Atlas is not a comet. It is not an asteroid. It is not a coincidence. It is a process, a design, a presence with purpose. Now the question is no longer whether Atlas is alive. The question is whether Mars is only the beginning, because the signals are no longer coming from another world. They are here now, pulsing in our skies, vibrating in our machines, and perhaps even within us. The countdown has already begun, and when Atlas makes its next move, humanity will face a truth that changes everything. We are not watching a comet. We are witnessing an awakening.